Hello and welcome to A Cup of Tea with Dr. Z, where we share everyday stories with you, everyday women. Are you ready to hear heart-to-heart key issues that we all face, no matter where we are in the world? So grab your cup of tea and let's welcome your host, author, international speaker, reinvention strategist, and woman that's full of faith in God and mankind.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Cup of Tea with me, Dr. Z. Today is episode 9. Yes, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've been going 9 times. That's 9 weeks. Well, not including the Christmas, 9 weeks, and we're still going strong. And today, with my special guest, the lady behind my mother. And today we're talking about beginnings and endings. The lessons that I have learnt from my lovely dear mother, Rosalind Ifoma Arinze. Now, I know all of us have mothers, and what I will say is use this opportunity to bond with your own mother and learn as many lessons as possible. Now, the first thing I want to do, because if this is about extraordinary women, talking about everyday women with extraordinary stories from around the world, it would be a travesty if I didn't speak a little bit about my mother. And for the next few months or so, I'll probably be touching on different lessons that I've learned from her over the years. Now, I'll start from the beginning. I was born when my mates were born in the 60s. My mother had left Nigeria. She got on a boat. She didn't go to England or come to England on a plane. She actually was on the boat. And I think at the time it took about 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's not like now that it takes maybe 5.5 hours, 6 hours, and you land. And yes, my mum came to join my father, who came to England in 1959, I think, and my mother came to join him. And I remember her telling me stories about that particular year. She came in the winter. It was one of the worst winters of all time, according to her, and I think according to history as well. It was one of the worst winters at the time. And my mother, I'm just putting my phone on mute. My mother absolutely detested it with a passion. The weather was horrible. There was racism and all the other things. It was nothing like the landscape we see today, although some of those situations or circumstances still exist, but it was completely different. It was 10 times worse, according to the stories that I hear, especially from the Windrush generation, and people like my parents that came in the late 50s and early 60s. Now, my mother was brought up with hard work. She knew and believed that hard work will get you everywhere. She was exceptionally diligent. She was exceptionally punctual. And for those of you that might be watching this on the replay, I haven't really published. I'll send the replay because I just want to do this as a private time now. And if you happen to you're watching this wherever you are, that's fantastic. Please let me know if you're watching it on LinkedIn, if you're watching it on Facebook, if you're watching it on YouTube, wherever it is that you are, feel free to put in some comments. But if you're not watching it now and you watch it on the replay, that's fantastic as well. Now, like I said, my mother was exceptionally diligent, exceptionally hardworking, a woman full of wisdom, full of grace, and exceptionally punctual. Now, I've got quite a few of those traits, not all of them. And for those of you that know me personally, you would probably know the one that I'm not that great at, but we can't be perfect. But what I really want to talk about is beginnings and endings. Like I said, I was born in the 60s and I was fostered out to my foster mother so that my parents could study. And when I was 5, I was brought back home to start primary school and lived with my parents, and the rest is history. But one of the first things I noticed about my mother really, really, really early on is that my mother was exceptionally quiet. So she would not look for, no, she would not look for your trouble. She was not confrontational. She was always talking about peace. However, if you looked for her trouble, oh, by Jove, you'll get more than you bargained for. Completely different from me. I'm not confrontational at all, or sometimes I can be a bit passive aggressive. Oh, I can't believe I'm admitting that. But, you know, my mum believed that, number one, in hard work, in honesty, in integrity, and in keeping the peace. She would not look for trouble, but like I said, if you looked for her trouble, she will definitely give you what, what for. Another thing I learned from my mom is, the importance of being punctual, not being on time, but being punctual. So say, for instance, when my mom used to work, she used to work in the NHS, work would start. I mean, before then, she used to work for NatWest and she used to work for the NHS. And if work was supposed to start at 7 o'clock, my mum would be at work at 6 o'clock. She would not be leaving for work at 6 o'clock like some of us, or even 6:30. She would have arrived at work at least an hour and a half before work would resume. And I would say, Mum, why are you doing that? Why do you do? She said, well, you need to anticipate that there might be a train crash, a plane crash, a bus problem, your car might not start, and you still want to get at work at a time when there's very few people there. You can relax, have a cup of tea. I have one now. I need more than a cup of tea right now. I can tell you. Have a cup of tea and oh God, I need that. Have a cup of tea and relax and plan your day. So by the time other people come into work, at the time work starts, maybe 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever, she would have been at work for at least an hour and a half, relaxed, ready to start, not rushing around. And she felt that, when you do that, you are much more, what would I say, much more productive, and you're able to work without stress. So it's a stress-free environment, and you're able to think and plan your day long before people arrive. So that's another thing I've learnt from my mother. Another thing is, the importance of being content. Oh, my mother could not understand, all this microwave generation where we're always in a hurry to do stuff. She said the reason why we're always in a hurry is because we don't do things on time. We don't plan ahead. We don't leave enough time for any eventuality. And as far as she was concerned, take your time gently, 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 and you will win the race. So, she was completely on the side of doing it gradually, not being in a hurry, but doing it properly. It was whatever was worth doing well. It wasn't about doing things in a rush or doing things half-heartedly or doing things that weren't complete or did not look good. She was a bit of a perfectionist, but she would give herself enough time to do things perfectly. Whether it was reading her Bible, my mum would wake up at 4 o'clock and she would say to me, I call her on the phone and I say, hi, Mum, what are you doing? She said, oh, no, don't disturb me at the moment. I'm having my breakfast. I'm like, it's 4 o'clock in the morning where you're at. She said, yes, I'm having my spiritual breakfast first. 4 o'clock in the morning before her grandchildren wake up, before her daughter, my other sister wakes up. So she is able to be calm, calling the Holy Spirit, read, Word of God, find out what the Word of God is telling her to do on that particular day before she started her day. And one of the things about that was she said to me and to all of us, me and my siblings, that it's really important to be content. Don't be envious. Don't keep wanting things, because the more you keep wanting, she would say to us, you need to cut your coat according to your cloth. I'm sure you would have heard that in so many different versions, in so many different accents. And it was about being content with what you have and using what you have effectively. So she was all for making sure that you were able to utilize every skill, every passion, every coin. It was one of those things where my mother never ever ran out of money. Never. throughout the whole time that I knew her, was with her, she never ever ran out of money. She always had more than enough. And she used to try to teach us that if we were able to manage our finances properly, manage our resources properly, manage our time effectively, we will, number one, have more than enough. But number two, we'll be content. Number three, she taught us about whatever you had, be ready to share with other people, be ready to share. She was a strong advocate for not just peace but justice. She hated unfairness, and I don't like that word hate. That's a word that I try not to use. She detested unfairness. Anything that smelt of being unfair, my mother was not part of it. She absolutely tested it. For as far as she was concerned, it had to be fair for everyone concerned. It didn't matter what color, what race, it just had to be fair. Another thing my mum taught me is the power of connection, that it's so important to nurture friendships. She used to say that you don't need to have many friends, but the few, many, whatever quantity you had, it was important to nurture relationships. So you go about asking about how people were. My mother knew, the names of your children, your husband, your wife, whatever was happening, the next door neighbors, the people that lived in our compound, our tenants. She knew their life story. And every time she would see them, she would ask them something. Oh, how is your daughter today? How is your son? How is your husband? How is your grandma? She always took her time to not just say hello because that was the right thing to say. So she wouldn't just say hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but she would actually, speak to you because she was interested in your life. She wanted to know more about you and she wanted to learn from you, but she also wanted to empower you as well. I mean, I have to say my mom was a helicopter mom, just like me. So I got that from her. We are five siblings, and we're grown up and we have our own children. And she was always wanting to know what was happening in our lives, how we were managing our lives, how we were, like for me, she wanted to know about my coaching business, my speaking business, my books. When am I going to write another book? When am I going back to law? She was always wanted to know things that I was doing, and she was so interested. So whenever you spoke to her, you knew that it was as if only you were in the room. I mean, I could talk about my mother forever. There are so many things. And I have to say, she really was an everyday woman who had so many extraordinary stories. I remember her telling me a story of when she was 10 years old and she was in a playground. This was in a place called Port Harcourt in Nigeria, so it was ages ago, in the playground, and someone was being beaten up. Now, my mum's a very, small woman, not like me, very small woman, about 5'2", 5'1". And she said to me that she would see people being beaten up and she would go immediately to go and rescue them. Now you can imagine someone that's really tiny and fighting all these boys and girls just because she saw unfairness and injustice being done to other people. She hated bullies. She detested bullies. My mum was really a firm believer in resilience. She said nothing should stop you from moving forward. So if you had a plan, nothing should stand in your way. And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this show today. I almost didn't do it. Nothing should stand in your way. My mum was really not just a woman of integrity, but she was really passionate about letting your yes be your yes and your no being your no. She didn't like fibs. She didn't like if you said you were going to do something. So, I'm going to do this tomorrow. Make sure that you're doing it or don't say it. So she would say, don't promise something if you know there's a slight possibility that you would not fulfill. My mum wasn't a yes woman. My mum was, if she can't do something, she would say yes, no. If she could do it, she would say yes. Not just being resilient, not just being a woman of integrity, but she was also a woman of strong faith. Strong faith. Every single day, for as long as I can remember, my mum would wake up in the morning, and when we were little, wake us up to read the Bible. We would all be half asleep and like, oh, no, not again. Read the Bible, sing choruses, and just, figure out what the Holy Spirit was saying. That you see me here as Dr. Zena, this woman, this extraordinary woman that does all, coach, reinvention, and all the other things that I do, speaker, lawyer, project management consultant, leader, project lead, what all the different things, all the different titles and hats that I wear and all the multi awards that I have won. I would never even have gotten even a fraction to where I am today without my mother. And I'm not just saying without my mother giving birth to me, I'm talking about without my mother actually imprinting her values into me and my siblings, but also doing all that she could to ensure that we followed those values. So every 2 seconds she'll call me, did you do this? Did you do this, Zena? Did you do that? And I'm like, Mom, I'm a big woman. She said, I don't care. Have you done this? How many promises did you make this month? I'm like, I don't think about it like that in promises. How many things did you say you were going to do? Have you done them? I'm like, oh, why don't you write them down just to make sure? I'm like, I've done them. Write them down just to make sure so you're not disappointing anyone. My mother absolutely detested disappointing people. She would, rather than disappointing you, she would not even promise to do it. She would actually go over and above to ensure that thing she said she was going to do or buy or be for you, she would do it. My mother didn't believe in excuses. There was no excuse is good enough. If you made a promise to do something, if you made a commitment, then you need to be able to carry out that commitment. And if for any, life happens, if for any situation you cannot fulfill that commitment, my mother used to say, then you need to look for an alternative. So you need to provide another solution. So it's like, okay, I promise that I'm going to buy you a loaf of bread. This is a silly example, really. I promise that I'm going to buy you a loaf of bread. Maybe I'm talking to my next door neighbor. I'm going to get you a loaf of bread tomorrow. And then I'm driving and my car breaks down, or no, I don't want to say that because my car shouldn't break down, but something happens and I'm unable to get that loaf of bread. And you are probably depending on that bread. Perhaps for supper with your children, you're going to have bread and soup or something. And that bread was absolutely pivotal to your evening meal. I would either buy a different meal for you completely, because that's the way my mother's raised me, or buy a close substitute, maybe buy some crackers, or I might take you out for a meal instead. But I would look for something else to do to ensure that even if in a situation where I haven't been able to fulfill that commitment for reasons beyond my control, I've actually spoken to you, apologized, and offered you something else that might be a close substitute for now, with a promise that I'll be able to sort that out later on. And I got that from my mother. Very soon I will be releasing a book called 29 Lessons from My Mother. So keep your ears peeled, your ears open and your eyes peeled. I will be releasing it hopefully before Mother's Day, but I thought I'll just jump on quickly and just talk a little bit about my mother as an extraordinary woman. As small as she was mighty, extremely mighty. There would have been no me without my mother, no grandchildren without my mother. And I'm not talking in terms of multiplication. I'm talking in terms of what she was able to, really infuse in each of us. And I'm looking at the time, and I promised myself this was going to be a very short one. If you have any questions or anything you want to ask, please feel free. I'll read your comments out. But also, and I'll just because I made some notes because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do this show as effectively, but I believe that with the spirit of my mum, I'm doing this. 0503. So I'm just going to quickly look at some notes that I made that I did want to cover. And I think I've covered most of the things, but I just want to make sure that there's something that each of you, whoever's listening around the world, or if you listen to this on the replay, that you can take forward in your life. More importantly, if you've got family members, please go to them, tell them that you love them, spend your time with them. That's really, really important, valuable time, because sometimes you can't get the time back. And let's see, I had something that I know there's something in the back of my mind I really want to share. And I think I've touched on it, but I just want to make sure. Where are you? Let's see. 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 No, that's not what. No. Where are my notes? Where are my notes? I normally talk without notes, don't I? But this is a different day today, so I just want to make sure that the things that I promised to touch on, promised myself really, that I'm doing that. So let's just see. So I've touched on most of the things, I think. Yes, let's see. So I've talked about resilience. What else have I talked about? Talked about resilience. Ah, yes, legacy. My mother talked about, not even taught all of us, and especially me. I'm the first daughter in the middle child, but first daughter, so I've got main character syndrome and middle child syndrome, as they like to say. But she, taught me the importance of leaving a positive legacy. So not just leaving one when you go home, but living one. So even while you're alive, beginning to do things that can impact your future generations, whatever that may be. Look for things that are, that mean a lot to you, that can ensure that the people that come after you or are after you can take something with them. So when you're passing on the baton, you're passing on something that even when you're gone, they have not just fond memories, and not when they're crying, but they're remembering things that they can put into their life, in their jobs, in their careers, in their families. She also told me that it's important to find joy in just even in the simple pleasures. So some of you might know that I like to travel a lot. After, I like to travel a lot. I'm divorced, but I still look for fun, joy in even the most simplest things. I travel a lot. I go for spas, me, myself, and I go to the cinema, I go to the theater. Sometimes I go with friends. I've got lots of friends, but even when friends are not available, that will not stop me. I go out to enjoy my life, to look for happiness even in the everyday moments of life. Going for a walk. I went for a walk just before this show because it helps me to not just clear my head, but to really put things into perspective. And I got that from my mum. Another thing I learned from my mum is the importance of being independent, the importance of being able to not just live with other people, which is fantastic, and thrive with other people, but also to be able to thrive even by yourself. Be able to understand that with or without people, you're able to, how will I put it, stand on my own 2 feet. Got that from my mother. But not just stand up, but stand powerfully, stand with authority, stand with grace, and keep moving forward, and being able to make independent decisions, not always kind of, looking for validation from friends and family, but owning your decisions. And if you've got it wrong, you can start again. My mother also taught me, I don't know how I forgot this one, the importance of saying, I am sorry. Now, many of us find that really difficult, but when you say, I am sorry, it just makes things so much easier to move on. You're not just saying sorry because you've offended someone, but you're saying sorry because you want to make the atmosphere peaceful. You're saying sorry because that's what God expects for those of you that believe in God. But you're saying sorry because you want the person to know that you've heard them. You want the person to understand that you're seeking forgiveness. And even if they don't accept your apology, it doesn't matter. You've done the right thing. My mom said it's so important not to hold on to grudges. She said to me, holding on to grudges is detrimental, not just to your faith walk with God, but detrimental to your physical health. And and that is really, really important. Forgiveness, you talked about, being involved in the community, why it's important to, play your part, to, not just be insular and think about yourself, but think about how your life can impact someone else, not your family member. That's easy. Not your daughter, your son, your husband, your wife, your sister, your brother, your in-laws, your cousins, people that look like you. That is fantastic. But even people that you are not related to in any shape or form, why it's important to be involved in your community so that you can not just contribute to the community, you contribute not just to their well-being, to the economy, to anything that can make a difference in someone's life in your local community. My mum also talked about the value of education, and I could go on forever and ever and ever and ever. But right now, I think this is a good time to stop. Three last things I will just share quickly. Make sure that whoever, if your mother is still alive, please look for her, seek her out, hug her, kiss her, tell her that you love her, and start from now to learn lessons if you haven't done that already. Lessons, even write it down. I've written down a whole lot of things that my mother was teaching me. Write it down. Have faith, not just in God, if you believe like me, but have faith in spite of challenges. Even in the face of challenges, whether it's health challenges, financial challenges, emotional, whatever those challenges are, have faith. I remember when I was going through my divorce, my mother said, have faith, stand strong, have grace, be respectful. And it really put me in good stead. So I leave you now with one last word, no, two. Be resourceful in everything that you have, be content, and have gratitude. Thank you so much for listening. This was a short one, but I just needed to quickly share a few things about my mother, an extraordinary woman who has extraordinary stories, and perhaps another day I will tell a story that she told me. But like I said, probably around March time, hopefully, or around there, before before the summer, I will release a new book called 29 Lessons, and the title might change a little bit, but there will be number 29, because the 29 is a very important number to me and my siblings. So 29 lessons that I have learnt from my mother. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you so much for listening. My mother died on the 29th of January, just a few days ago. So this is just in her honor. And God bless you. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to A Cup of Tea with Dr. Z, your reinvention queen. We hope you've been motivated and inspired to go out there and conquer any obstacles and issues you may face. You can find Dr. Zena on all social platforms. Until next time, remember, you're not alone.
Yes, you're not alone.